Picture yourself in this scenario. You're a content creator online, but motivation is low and burnout is at an all-time high. You go out and get some food at a local convenience store, and on your way back home, you suddenly black out and wake up in a completely new place in a completely new body with no memory or explanation as to what happened to you. What would you do? In this very specific case, Joel, aka PorcelainMaid, took advantage of an abandoned mansion, broke into his old apartment, took his PC back, and just continued streaming and creating content online. Hi, my name is Anna the Witch. I'm an artist, writer, and lover of convoluted lore and stories and crafting together what they could possibly mean. About 2 years ago, I was introduced to the world of VTubers through TikTok, and since then, one of my favorite parts of VTubers is the lore they craft to fit the characters they create and use as their avatar in their streams. PorcelainMaid, in particular, has written and presented his lore in a way that has grabbed my attention in a chokehold and sent me on a hunt to try to dissect and figure out what the fuck is actually happening. Before I dive further into Joel's lore and begin breaking down pieces to try to piece this puzzle together, let me address the elephant in the room, or in this case, the sword. If you are a part of Joel's community and come to his Twitch streams or his Discord server, you will probably recognize me as one of his moderators. I have been a moderator for Joel for 1 year now, and I am very active in his community. Being fully transparent and honest, even as a moderator, Joel does not give us any information or spoilers to his lore, nor does he confirm or deny any ideas presented to us, even if we ask. Any ideas that I share with you today or in the future are purely theories and not confirmed or denied by Joel. Believe me, I tried.
Hope you don't mind the specific question, but what about Golem girls? Can Golem is in fucking Lord of the Rings? Because you're spelling it as in Lord of the Rings and not Golem. Can golems die without the body being destroyed? It depends specifically on the golem and where their life force is. I would say that there's like 1,000 different types of golems. In this case, doll golems. Why the fuck are you asking how to kill me? Why is my own mod asking how I would die? I'm not helping you with your lore theory. You already got your answer. Al, you already got the answer. I gave it to you.
So please keep in mind that while I am a moderator, I am kept in the dark as much as the community, and honestly, I prefer to keep it that way. It's more fun being surprised and coming up with ideas with everyone rather than being told the whole story and knowing everything. Now, with that being said, let's begin starting with what we do know about Joel and the mystery behind this life-sized Victorian ball-jointed doll and an abandoned mansion. Joel, per his raid intro, used to be a, and I will use quotations, sexy sack of man meat who then died, and his soul is now trapped inside the body of a sexier female doll. In normal terms, he is a man who blacked out and woke up inside the body of a female ball-jointed doll. Joel since then has given zero fucks about how he got stuck in the new body and used that as motivation in his streaming on Twitch. Most, if not all, the information that we know about him, or more so the doll before him, is hinted in his lore video. The technical term for the way that his lore is presented to us is using what we call implied narrative. Implied narrative in stories is the act of using visual cues, writing, images, without fully telling the story, and allows the viewer to come to the conclusion of what is happening on their own. An example of implied narrative in media is the Dark Souls video game series, where the majority of its story is hidden in descriptions of items or scenery, and you're never really told to your face what has actually happened. Joel has mentioned multiple times that Dark Soul was one of his inspirations for how he writes his own lore, where you only see what is left over after all the main story has already happened. Joel is very careful about trying to keep immersion during his streams, often referring to how he doesn't have internal organs, doesn't really need to eat, and talks about how he himself doesn't know what happened to the mansion or the doll before him. Despite his raid intro saying he, quote, died, when he's asked in normal streams, he reaffirms that he blacked out, and that no one actually knows if he died or not, including himself. The entirety of his lore is then left to the viewers to figure out and piece together. I highly encourage watching his lore video yourself and seeing if you can find anything that will help support your own theories. So let's go over the lore video together and start to pick apart the pieces of the puzzle. The lore video opens up to Joel in his apartment. It's a modern day apartment with normal appliances, implying that it is present day with normal technology that we're used to, i.e. a fridge, TV, lamps, etc. He is a bit unkempt, his fridge is notably empty, and on the background very clearly is a news broadcast with a missing persons displayed. The image in the broadcast is of a person with glasses, a tie, a vest, and appears to be a little bit more put together and formal than your average person. The next scene is of Joel heading to a local convenience store to get something to eat, and once again a missing persons poster is displayed. There is no image of the person, and the text is fuzzy and hard to make out of the supposed description of the person. Following that, we see Joel walking into an alley with bags of groceries in hand, and you see the very first appearance of a shadowy image with glowing white eyes lurking behind him. Then the screen goes black, and we are met with what we can assume is Joel's point of view. His vision is blurry and spotted and dark with black shapes. His eyes then shut, and then he blinks his eyes open again, waking up to the sight of a ceiling with a hole in it and vines draping through it. The scene moves to a view of a figure laying on broken pieces of the ceiling in a large, dilapidated mansion. Pieces of stone are all over, cracks in the pillows, and more foliage and overgrowth is seen, implying the mansion has been abandoned for quite some time. The figure is in a large ruffled and ornate Victorian dress and a bonnet on their head. There is visible damage to the dress, including torn parts of the sleeves and the skirt being ripped. The next scene, we get our first closer view of Joel in his new body of a feminine ball-jointed doll. The doll is fully articulated with joints, has long flowing white hair, red eyes, and a visible large crack in the right cheek. We know this is Joel because the first thing he does after waking up and realizing what body he is in, he grabs his own tits. Joel begins to explore around the mansion. The architecture is visibly older style than his previous apartment. Arched ceilings and segmented panels on the walls were often used in Victorian architecture, which makes sense considering the style of the doll. There is more debris and plant life, and on the wall appear to be picture frames that are all specifically empty, whether that is on purpose or artistic choice to save time, I'm not too sure. Joel enters a bedroom with furniture tossed over, more empty frames, and a tall mirror where he can finally see the full image of his new self. After a little voguing in the mirror, Joel falls back, and the force of him hitting the floor knocks one photo off the wall, the only one with an actual photo still inside it. There is a visible lighter square on the wall, implying the photo on the wall was there for an extended time. The scene moves to Joel sitting up in the room, showing a bed with a stuffed rabbit toy, a nightstand, and a music box sitting on top. Joel looks at the fallen photo. He then shrugs and tosses it away, seemingly not really caring about it or wondering what it could mean. On the back of the photo itself, there are two things vaguely written on there: Damnia, and a small drawing of a spider or a bug. Behind Joel in the doorway of the room again is the figure with the glowing white eyes watching him. The scene changes to Joel back at his apartment, climbing in through his window with the cityscape of his old town behind him. Again, the city itself is modern and urban, which is now a very stark contrast to the Victorian doll body Joel has now. Joel steals his old PC setup, brings it back to the mansion, and sets it up for his live streaming again like nothing has ever changed. Behind Joel one more time is the shadow figure, closer than before, and now we can notably see the glowing white eyes are visibly swirling. It disappears out of the air, implying it was not a solid being there in the first place. Joel folds his arm onto the table and looks at the photo from before. The photo is now in a completely new frame and placed on Joel's desk, implying that Joel may care a little bit more about it than first expected. We finally get a good view of the image itself. The photograph is of the doll and a young child. The child is dressed in formal Victorian clothing with a cravat, a collar chain, and appears to be fairly young. I would say maybe between 10 to 15 years old, and is smiling. The doll has a very neutral expression with her hands resting on the child's shoulders. Her dress is still torn, and the crack is still present in her cheek. The lore video ends with the spiral eyes of the figure again, and a to be continued to show that there is more lore coming in the future. Now, as far as outside the lore video, Joel has mentioned there are a few details of his streams that he deems canon. Besides his original model and outfit, his beach outfit and the upcoming monster form are considered to be canon to his story. The Eldritch Nun is considered to be an alternate reality and not part of the canon lore at all. A second piece of important information is the very first artwork of the doll that Joel has made. The doll is his own original character that he made and then turned into his VTuber model. The image shows the doll chained up, visibly damaged and crying, with chains linking to the parts of the dress that are torn in the same places on his model. Lastly, this may skirt on the line of canon or not. A very frequent subject that turns up in streams are Monster Girl facts, a redeem on Joel's stream where he improvises a Monster Girl fact. Joel is an avid monster lover and aspires to make a Monster Girl book that doesn't rely on not safe for work features that other published works lean on. Joel specifically would categorize himself as a Golem Monster Girl, and to his definition, I'll let him explain.
Hey Dad, what's a cool golem fact? Did you know golems are magically engineered creatures based on, well, anything? It's an artificial life form that is made using the magic to give them life. So back in the olden days, golems will take the form onto whoever makes it. So if you make a golem, the form a golem takes is the one of the person you love the most. So if your most loved one is dead, missing, or if they're just, like if you have a wife and, they'll take the form of them. Most of the time, people that have their loved ones alive don't make golems because that'd be fucked up, and having the golem, look exactly like somebody who's already alive and you love, it would be weird. But a lot of the time when people lose their loved ones and can't handle the sense of loss, they make their own golems that look exactly like their loved ones. But here's where the bad thing happens. The golems only look like them. They have no memories of anything. They practically have to learn how to live by themselves. Because a lot of the time when somebody makes a golem and it resembles their loved one, but it isn't their loved one, they kind of have like a sense of disconnect and it fucks them up. So a lot of the golems are kind of, living on their own and learning about their own culture and making their own things. Because a lot of the people that make them either, leave when they find out that it's not the same thing, or they try to craft them into, something they're not, which is really fucked up. But golems are cool. Golems are cool. They have an interesting thing.
Now the facts are laid out, let's get to crafting some theories and ideas. Now, I say that this is maybe skirting on the line of canon because I believe there are some aspects of Joel's Monster Girl facts that he wouldn't necessarily write into his own lore. But I feel like he might be the type to include little tidbits. And specifically about golems, he had to think about it very long, very hard. And that particular fact I recorded and shared with you guys because he was very confident and did not hesitate at all. Now, this could very well be up to chops to his improv skills. He's very talented at what he does. But I like to feel like there might be a bit of truth in that particular fact, and let me go into actually crafting some of these theories that are in my head to see if they might make sense to you too. So at this point, everything from now on is speculation and nothing is confirmed, canon or not. These are all just pure thoughts and facts that I've researched and talked about with community to try to find something coherent. So, there are at least 4 specific characters that we're introduced to. Damia, who is the doll before Joel. The child in the photograph. The shadow with the spiral eyes. And Joel himself. Joel, we know him, we love him. He's our favorite man trapped in a doll. But in this case, Joel is the end result of whatever actually happened. So instead of himself, let's turn the focus onto the body he is now possessing. Damnia, or Domnia, named confirmed by Joel through his streams on the back of the photo and carved into the neck joint of the doll itself, is the doll who Joel's soul now controls and lives in. According to Joel, the doll itself without the shoes and the bonnet is 6'1", an incredibly tall figure for a doll. She is decorated in an intricate and elegant dress with frills and ruffles, a corset, stockings, has long flowing white hair and piercing red eyes. Multiple times I have mentioned or referred to her style as Victorian era due to the styling specifically on the dress. If you take a look at the dress itself, it is huge. This is the type of dress that would be worn with what is actually called a crinoline. Crinolines are essentially a bone structure worn under skirts and dresses during the mid-1800s and was used to give shape and volume to large dresses such as these so they didn't fall flat or made it difficult in walking for the wearer. The Victorian era of fashion took place between 1837 and lasted until 1901. Referencing old photographs, you can see a common repeating pattern in feminine fashion was large dresses, layers, frills, laces, you name it, they had it. Granted, the dress itself on the doll may be a bit short for a true Victorian era and leans a little bit more into what would possibly be considered Gothic Lolita fashion, but this may be more stylized choice by Joel when he designed the character first, instead of having a deeper meaning to it. Now, Domnia's actual role is where I try to start to tie up some loose ends and piece together who she was and what she had to do with the other characters in this story. Joel has referenced on stream that the doll was meant to be an actual maid, and when you look back to the photograph of Domnia and the child, it could imply that Domnia was a caretaker of some kind, or at least had enough importance to the child that they would take a photo together. However, taking a quick glance at traditional Victorian maids versus normal wear or higher status women during that same era, the dresses are very differently styled. The colors are almost always portrayed as simple black and white with an apron and bonnet. The only things in common of a traditional maid in comparison to Domnia's dress is the bonnet itself. There is no apron, and trying to think of anyone functionally cleaning or doing daily chores in a giant dress is very unlikely. So my first theory on this leans into that Domnia may have transitioned into being a caretaker or maid, but I don't think her original purpose was to be a maid at all. I suspect that she was created to replace someone who had died or was lost. To piece together Domnia's story and everyone else tied into her, the easiest way I can imagine is in the form of a timeline. We have at least 3 versions of Domnia that we know of: the doll before the photograph, the visibly damaged doll in the photograph with the child, and this mysterious monster form that Joel has confirmed is part of the canon story and took place before he possessed the doll. Domnia is created to replace someone that has died by a specialized doll maker. Going off of Joel's Monster Girl facts for golems, she takes the form of the doll maker's most loved one. Taking into account the height and shape of the doll, Domnia is the form of an adult woman, and I would suspect that she is the appearance of the dollmaker's wife, or maybe even their mother, who knows. The dollmaker dresses Domnia in clothes from the departed one in an attempt to replace them. But the issue is that Domnia is not the same person the dollmaker lost. She is an artificial life created, but with a mind and soul of her own. Golems, per Joel, do not have the memories of who they were modeled after and have to start with basically a blank slate. Because she is obviously not the one the dollmaker tried to replace, that would build tension, resentment, and ultimately anger towards Domnia. The dollmaker, I'd imagine, is already unstable enough if they are willing to go as far as to craft a doll to replace someone instead of grieving and working through that loss. With that unstable mentality, unfortunately, I believe that would lead to possibly an abusive relationship or abandonment. The next part of the timeline, in my theory, is where I go a little unsure because of 2 things. The photograph and the original artwork of Domnia, Joel made when he first created his character. In my head, it would be so simple to piece together that the child in the photograph is who Domnia was taking care of, and then who the person she was made to replace was the child's mother. However, in the photo, Domnia is visibly damaged. Her dress is torn, and her cheek has that crack. The same crack and damages in the dress specifically are where she was chained up in the attic, according to the original artwork. If Domnia was meant to be the child's caregiver and motherly figure, why would Domnia end up in the attic before that photo was taken? Why would the child in the photo appear to be so carefree if they were aware Domnia had been damaged, presumably, by the doll maker who made them? Why was Domnia chained up in the attic in the first place? Because of that, what I'm inclined to believe happened next is the monster form. After who knows how long Domnia may have endured the dollmaker obsessively trying to make them something they are not, her body changes. With living in a home with a dollmaker and notably extra parts laying around, multiple limbs transform this elegant, beautiful doll into something uncanny and disturbing, and Domnia confronts and attacks the dollmaker. This altercation could lead into why Domnia's cheek is broken, maybe from the dollmaker trying to defend themselves with a blunt weapon of some kind. Perhaps after the strike to the face, Domnia is left unconscious and gives the dollmaker time to chain her up and restrain her in the attic, with chains in her ball joints on her shoulder, elbow, and ankles. The dollmaker then either leaves and abandons Domnia in the attic and leaves the mansion as is, or succumbs to wounds they've received during the fight and passes on. Either way, Domnia is left to gather dust and stay locked away for who knows how long. Flash forward, maybe years later, a new family moves into the mansion. Of the family, there is a child. The child is rightfully curious of their new home and goes exploring, and discovers the attic and Domnia inside. They release Domnia, unknowing to the monster form that lives inside her. And Domnia then takes on the role of the maid and caretaker of the child and the new family of the mansion. This would be where the story ends if everything was all good and they happily lived ever after, but there are still a few missing pieces. Sometime between that photograph and Joel possessing the doll, something happened that caused Domnia to go dormant, and the child to supposedly go missing. I was stumped at what could have possibly happened at this point, and while I was rambling about this story in the Dollhouse Discord, one member specifically pointed out an older piece of art that Joel had done in 2020. This artwork depicts a person in front of a mirror, with multiple ball-jointed hands reaching through them. This person isn't exactly the same as the child in the photograph, but the colors, the bangs, the outfit details, they're all almost eerily similar. The ball-jointed hands appeared unfinished and are also cracked and damaged. Paying attention to the lore video and the streams themselves, it is a common sight to see the shadow with spiral eyes appears in mirrors and around corners. Now, would I go as far as to say that Domnia can travel through mirrors? Not really, no. This artwork may be a little bit of a stretch, but maybe it's a hint that when the child grew older, something happened that triggered Domnia's monster form again. Maybe the child and the family are missing or dead because of Domnia. The events could have been so catastrophic that it breaks even the roof and leaves a giant piece of the ceiling in the foyer and furniture tossed over, mirrors cracked and broken. Domnia, in the shock and horror of what she had done to a family that she may have formed a bond with, becomes hollow and the body is no longer animated. Whatever happened to the spirit of Domnia, she is either dormant or just gone. It's unclear how golems or living objects die without the body physically breaking. That leaves us with at least one more character to analyze and place in this story. The Shadow, or Spiral Eyes, is how I've come to refer to them as. Spiral Eyes is the one character that is both prevalent in the lore video and is still continuously seen in Joel's streams right now, and not just behind in past events. because Spiral Eyes frequently disappears out of sight, hides behind corners and mirrors, leads me to believe that there are ghosts haunting not just the mansion, but the doll itself. They are taller, with no visible shape to them besides a simple silhouette, and are both seen in the mansion and outside of it. My original thought was that Spiral Eyes is the ghost of the child in the photograph. They follow Joel around the mansion in every scene on his stream. However, referencing back to the lore video, if the child is more attached to Domnia, why would Spiral Eyes be seen following Joel in the city down that alley? If they were attached to the doll, I would imagine they would stay close to the doll and in the mansion. That leads me to suspect that Spiral Eyes could be instead the spirit of the original dollmaker. In death, perhaps the dollmaker is still obsessing over Domnia, or more so the figure that looks like their departed loved one. Maybe when Domnia became dormant, it spurred Spiral Eyes to search out other souls to inhabit the doll and make her move again. Maybe they're targeting people that no one would initially miss. Or, another option is that Spiral Eyes is the spirit of Domnia herself. Domnia could have, quote, died after the events that led her body to be hollow, and holds a grudge against the one that ruined her life in the first place. In the very first scene of the lore video, we see the missing persons news article and the photo of what appears to be a man with short hair, glasses, the vest, and tie. While Joel doesn't wear similar clothing at that time, one could argue maybe the short hair and physical build was similar to the original dollmaker. Another missing persons poster is posted outside the convenience store, either implying it's the same person, or maybe there are multiple people missing. If Domnia's spirit is specifically targeting people that look similar to the dollmaker, Joel could have been spotted for that. And in the process of attacking, maybe even absorbing his soul, Joel somehow did what the other missing people couldn't. Maybe his soul embraced the change and somehow he melded with the doll body. Maybe the lack of motivation and the blank slate could have been what was needed to reanimate the doll again. Either of those options could be plausible, but personally, I'm leaning towards the idea that Spiral Eyes is in fact Domnia, and she has unfinished business left. I don't think she is necessarily a vengeful doll or spirit, but one that just wants to be heard and understood. She went through a lot of pain and trauma and loss from the moment she was created. What does that mean for Joel now? It's very possible that monster that was part of Domnia could still be hidden away deep inside the doll itself. I imagine we'll have more light shed on that when the monster form debut finally comes. To summarize this very long TED Talk and VTuber lore theory deep dive, here is my synopsis of events and timelines for PorcelainMaid, theoretically. The original dollmaker creates Domnia in resemblance to a loved one who passed. Domnia, with no memories of the previous person, falls victim to the dollmaker's grief and resentment because she is not his original loved one at all. In an attempt to fix her, or make her something she isn't, the monster form is born, and Domnia attacks the dollmaker. The dollmaker strikes back, causing the crack in her face, and knocks her out. He then chains her up in the attic and leaves or succumbs to his injuries and dies. Years later, a new family moves into the mansion and the child discovers Domnia in the attic and releases her. Domnia then is hired as the maid of the house and caretaker of the child since she had nowhere else to go. Something triggers or awakens the monster form years later, and Domnia accidentally attacks the family and possibly kills them. Domnia then becomes dormant and dies. The spirit of Domnia is restless, and in grief and anger searches out people at the nearby city in this modern era that physically appear similar to the dollmaker. Joel gets caught in the middle and is attacked by Spiral Eyes. He either dies or his soul is absorbed into the doll, and his soul accepts the new body, and then he becomes the doll itself. The spirit of Domnia now follows him around the mansion, watching and keeping an eye on him and the doll body she once inhabited, and Joel is none the wiser. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into PorcelainMaid's lore and the theories I've cooked up for this. Like I said, stories and mysteries like these are one of my passions, and I really enjoy digging and searching for all these clues that I could come up with. I really hope I did this story justice. If any of these theories end up being true or accurate, I'll both be surprised and probably scream in excitement and validation. Let me know what you think. Do you have any other ideas or theories about Joel and this mysterious porcelain doll? Until we learn more, I'll be in my little lore theory library here, trying to piece together more ideas. Thank you for watching. Until next time, whenever next time is, big love. Bye-bye.